Hey, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Keith Reynolds, and this is SMarketPlace Live. And we are so thrilled to have our guest today, Kevin Juza, and I'm here with Tom. We run this podcast to talk about sales, marketing, and rock and roll. Tom Dempsey, welcome.
Hey, thank you. This is a big night for us.
It is. We're off to see the Rolling Stones after this show.
Yes, how exciting! Start me up.
This will be my fourth time seeing him.
All right, this actually, crazy as it sounds, will be my first.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, I get to hang out with you and watch you get baptized with the Rolling
Exactly.
Stones. So the craziest thing is, about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago after we got the tickets, my girlfriend Heather said to me that when we saw them, we both went independently in 1978, and we saw them at
Ooh,
Soldier Field. She and I were there, but didn't know that we were. We didn't hang out
uh,
together. And she was on the cover of I think it was the Chicago Tribune the next day wearing a parasol, holding a parasol. And it was a hot summer day. And so she told me this story. And then about 3 weeks ago, I was on Facebook and it goes by Rolling Stones 1978. It had the Chicago Tribune. And lo and behold, there was Heather at age, what, 16 in our sophomore year of high school. And I was like, "Is this you?" And she was like, "That's me."
oh,
So,
that's great.
and we're
Oh,
headed off to Chicago to see him next week. So big
all right.
Rolling Stones summer.
Yes, that's great, as it should be.
And you started your concert tour already this season.
Yes, I have. Absolutely.
How was Dead and Company?
Ah, it was unbelievable. So, Dead and Company at the Sphere in Las Vegas, and I'll tell you, it's it's dangerous because when you see a show there, it sets the standard for every other show that you see. I mean, the graphics are overwhelming. It's sensory overload, and it's a lot of fun.
Nothing compares to you.
Nothing compares to you. Yes.
All right, well, let's get moving. We've got Kevin Juza uh, joining us from San Diego. Welcome, Kevin.
How you
Uh,
guys doing?
All
good.
right.
So we met through H7, I think,
Yeah.
and on LinkedIn, and you've got some really great ideas about sales. And we've had a lot of marketers, and recently we started focusing on sales, and we really want to dig in and talk about your leadership and your idea of tenacious leadership, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, my name's Kevin Juza. I'm the Tenacious Leader. I live in San Diego, California. It is tough to live here because weather is so boring, but it's so wonderful at the same time. I'm just really happy that I'm following a great episode you guys had last week about sales and service and how that thing's exploding in that type of a marketplace. Because that's kind of where I find my home. I really help small business owners who are good at what they do, but they just need help to build their client base, and doing that through building a sales culture that supports that founder's vision of where they want to go. What I've realized in my time since COVID was a great instigator of a lot of new things. One of that was my new career as a coach and consultant helping companies. And so in doing that, I learned how hard startups get when they get to that point where they're making some continued money, but that founder just can't expand their ideas and their business. And so they want to bring in a sales team. And the first thing they do, I think, is the wrong thing, is they usually go out and hire a salesperson because they don't have the systems and processes in place that's repeatable yet. So instead of hiring a salesperson with an ego, very confidence really high, they're ready to go, and a founder that's ego is really high and their confidence is there. But how do you can grow a sales team is you got to bring in a BDR, SDR, somebody at the lower end of the sales cycle so they can learn and create the sales pipeline and they build trust with the founder, and the founder then can teach them along the way as they grow and become better at selling that business.
So you provide that bridge.
Yeah, I'm a sales coach for hire, and also a strategic mentor for the founders to how to then learn how to manage sales teams, how to engage with them, because you can't just say they created developers who execute their vision of their strategy of the writing up the code for their SaaS software, right? They're used to, here's the bullet points, do these 20 things, get back to me, and then we'll test it and go to the next one. They get a salesperson. Okay, here's the 20 things I need you to go do. Come back and let me know. And they'll wait a long time because salespeople don't do what you tell them to do unless they're successful at the first step. If it's not successful the first step, then they're going to go out and find their own way to get some success going because they're driven to make the success happen. But they're not going to be programmed unless each step is successful. So you have to have those systems and processes in place that are easy for them to reproduce.
And then we've talked also, there's the human element from the company and the salesperson, as we talked to Coach Keeg last week about that authenticity and really connecting with people and having authentic stories. And I guess that also would, in your world of being the bridge between the owner and the new salesperson, there's some storytelling that has to come together, right? So that everyone's on the same page.
Has to be some storytelling, but there also has to be great questions. When you really think about, I just spent a weekend at a convention in Florida on the floor of the convention, talking to just potential clients left and right. When I was listening to the founder talk, it was very much pride and proud of how the system has the best widgets and best solves the solution and brings things together. And it's really amazing. Buzzers, whistles, everything. But you know what? The people would leave and they wouldn't learn anything. And so you have to tell a story that engages the customer with you. So bringing in questions, learning what their priorities are and what their story is. And when you learn the story of the customer, you then can learn the story of how your story fits into where they want to go.
So you mentioned, Kevin, just a couple of minutes ago about repeatable systems, and I am fully on board with that. In your mind, what are the components of that sales system? Are there steps, or is it an equation, or what are the components?
Well, I believe in this day and age, social media and emails and outreach via the phone is a 3 components you have to have. I call it the daily rigor. And the salesperson has to have a daily rigor of just a couple sprints of 30 minutes to 40 minutes of sprints of emailing and social media and phone calling, probably 2 sets of those a day. And when you get into that rhythm that they're working on, always keeping everything fresh with their customer base, their prospects, that's how they make it happen. The daily rigor. So they have to be making 30 to 40 phone calls. No one likes calls, but that's how you're going to connect to people and be authentic, because you're actually listening and you're not just doing one-way communication. You're actually having dialogue with people. And knowing that they don't want to talk to you, you just have to know that no one wants to talk to you because you caught them at the wrong time. So what I say is you set it up with telling them the plot of the story that they're in. In that first 10 seconds of that conversation, when you get them on the phone, you have to tell them where they are in the movie that we're about to have. And when you let that person know, if they're the CEO of a great company, small, mid-sized company, you say, hey, I know you're looking to grow your business. And let me tell you where we're looking at helping you with outreaching software. How's that fit? That tells the CEO, I'm thinking marketing, I'm thinking revenue, I'm thinking business growth. Okay, now I can have this conversation. If you just go in there and try to be jokey and have a personal conversation with these people, they're thinking click because.
Right.
One of my hard things, sorry, Tom, one of my hard things is transitioning from that, setting the stage, to asking questions and then staying on point, asking questions. How do you coach people like me, a marketing guy? How do you coach me to ask questions and drill down and have that second level question, third level question?
Well, I'm going to build off what Keegan said last week, is you got to be authentic. Active listening is really being authentic listening. It's where you're actually listening to the person's situation and really trying to find a way to learn more. Being the curious, the word curious is key, because curiosity is the one where you have your passion and heart to learn the person's situation and then see if there's a connection or not. And when you're talking with people and you're being curious about what they're saying, your follow-up questions will get you to where you want to go if you're really listening to try to help them and serve them their needs. I'm not a sales coach that's all about getting numbers and reaching goals. It's about making connections that not are just for today, but how do you follow up in 2 weeks or a month to keep building that cycle? But authentic questions come from being curious.
That's so interesting. I think a lot of it is driven by the online world that we live in, but marketing is moving away from having leads in your pipeline to having active conversations going.
Definitely, definitely. When you look at LinkedIn outreach, social outreach on LinkedIn, if you're replying to people's responses within a day or within 20 seconds, that's how we were told to do that, because the fastest person to get response, you're more likely to make a connection. Reality is now they don't trust that because everything's so bodified and so automated that you have to be human to people to kind of connect and catch them along the journey to build relationship. It's not a transaction in relationships. It's actually building over time that this person keeps coming back. They're being consistent. They're being curious. They're giving me an idea of being human and how I want to connect with them. And so looking at your path to be more at pause. It's kind of like when you first were dating, you can't just sit there and try to close the deal and let's get married in the first date. You have to have those follow-up moments. You have to have those conversations to really build that relationship.
Yeah, I had a boss once tell me, don't ask for a kiss on the first date, focus on the relationship. Go ahead, Tom. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to talk about culture. And that is a very broad topic for sure. But I always thought that when somebody said, well, what's your culture like? And it's hard to define, but you can't perpetuate it unless you're able to define it, in my view. What are your thoughts about that? And how do you develop, not just for an individual, but for an organization?
Well, culture is really designed around what are you tracking? What are you monitoring? So if your goals are all about and everything you track and talk about is getting the client's commitment, then that's what the culture is going to be around. It's all about the finish line. But you know what? What I really love in a sales culture is really celebrating the journey. It's like when you're running a marathon, there's stages in that marathon. You've got to continue on. You have to be drinking water at certain stages, grabbing some food at a certain stage mile marker. So you have the energy to make the distance. If you're tracking the hard work it takes to build relationships and follow up, the more likelihood you're going to have more in your funnel at the end than just that one client that you got on the first conversation and you push them all the way through as fast as possible. You burn that person out and that client will be good or it won't be. You don't know. But if you take the long stance of building relationships, having that first connection, building up a follow-up, learning some information about them, building demos around their needs and where they're going, you're going to build trust. And then your pipeline gets thicker, thicker, thicker all the way down. And then you can land and you're not just chasing numbers, but you're creating a culture of service and people.
Yeah. Another element of that, and it speaks to the partnership of sales and marketing, is my observation is that the more people you have in your pipeline, in active conversations, the less dependent you are on any given lead, right? So you talk about that thick pipeline.
Right.
You're able to give people much more of an authentic experience because you're not under pressure with a thin pipeline.
Right. One of my clients, they do outsourcing for BDRs, and their goal is to make 100 dials a day. And that's really a good, if you can have that structures in place so people can do that kind of a volume of outbound calls, that's awesome. But you have to think of how do you make those connections last longer than just that one transaction. And when I coach people, I can get you to have 1 to 2 meetings a week. That's not a problem. Give me about 3 to 4 weeks. We get the system going, the sequences going, the right client ICP. You should be able to get 1 to 2 clients a meeting set a week. Now, how do you get to 4 to 5 meetings a week? That's about managing and building that connection pipeline. How do you actually bring people through that first connection, second connection, 10th connection, 12th connection, and really build them through a connection that they trust you? And then you start finding those falling into place 2, 3 months down the way. That's how you get to 4 to 5 meetings a week for an SDR.
Mm, good. I guess the other is I would assume, have a broad base of who you coach, and that's BDRs. It's region managers that manage a first line team. It's directors who manage the managers. It's VPs of sales who manage the whole organization. And that's a tall task. So when you think about it, do you change your approach, let's say from a BDR to a VP of sales? Does that make sense?
Yeah, when you're coaching the BDR, you're really giving them the tactical skills to be successful. And so when I'm sitting down and working with a salesperson or a BDR, if I don't give them coaching experience or ideas, building in their confidence or different ways to approach things, or coach them in learning why they're doing what they're doing, they then will last a lot longer and be more successful. When I'm coaching the vice president or a manager or whatever in this perspective, I'm really wondering, do they know their people? How are they connecting to the emotionness that's going to drive this person to make 100 dials a day or 40 dials a day? What are we doing to make sure we are pouring into them and learning how do they know how to truly coach? This is Coaching is truly listening and supporting the person and where they're going. It isn't calling plays and telling him to go do it. That's what some people think coaching is following the the reports that are coming out of Salesforce or HubSpot, and those are the plays you call, and that's what you're executing. No, these are individuals. You got to coach them on how to do a good block and keep reminding them the basics of their job, and they build from there. One other comment, if I don't mind adding, is you're talking about marketing and sales, the last question. When I work with the smaller the company and they want to hire a vice president of sales or a chief revenue officer, I'm like, time out, time out, time out. Put that money towards a chief marketing officer, somebody that truly gives them an umbrella, a message, a brand, a product clearness that the salespeople can execute. Hire me as a fractional person, and I can coach and manage the team to execute on the marketing strategies, because then your money, where you're putting it in your marketing, you're going to have people behind that marketing to execute it and learn faster, quicker, smarter, so you can make it better, faster. And so
That's music to my
Yeah.
ears.
but it's true at a certain stage. Now, when you get to 20 million or 40 million and you have a team of 40 salespeople or whatever, a larger scale, then, well, it's more probably when you're down to like 10 people, is really need to bring a manager of the sales department kind of coming in, or a strategic more person at that pace. But really at that very first beginning, where you just have 2 or 3 or 4 people, you really just need somebody who's strategic like myself and come in as a fractional and really help executing the marketing strategy and aligning the salespeople to the marketing strategy.
So talk to me about working with marketing and sales, having that defined sales process set up in your HubSpot, and then bridging the information you share at each stage, right? Like you said, you don't ask for the kiss or the marriage on the first date. You got what, 4, 5, 6 steps in your sales process. What are some of the kinds of content that you like to see, that you see work? Like I know an ROI calculator, for example, but talk to that journey, the content that you support that with, and how sales and marketing work together.
That's a webinar all in itself. But at a high level, it really comes down to, like, when you're sequencing, trying to build awareness, you want to see your valid and your experience in the marketplace. Your content needs to be really relevant to, here's what's going on in your space or in supporting your organization in the direction they're going. And I'm being very vague, but it's really a high level marketplace, market fit conversation that you're coming in that says we play in this area of manufacturing, uh, SaaS, or whatever the company's strategy or who their ICP is, but you're really saying, I know this marketplace. And once you build that trust, then you're able to share, people that's actually worked with you and give you testimonials and how you've helped them solve their problems. And then when those two things kind of start coming into play, if you're not getting curiosity from the prospect, then you really need to say, am I really hitting the right marks of what their needs could be right now? Is it time or is it money? What are you solving for the customer? And making sure you're asking the right questions to know then how do you give them the right message? Those do-it-yourself return on investment calculators are only good if their concern is ROI. They might just be, I need top revenue. We'll worry about expenses later because that's what my equity firm needs from me. So
Right. So cast a wide net and focus on filling the pipeline and understand that it's an investment.
Yeah.
And let's say that the culture is set. I come from a medical device background. I worked for a company called Boston Scientific for 14 years. And I'll tell you, the culture, I've tried to recreate that many, many times in startups since, and it's not easy to do. And we used to say, okay, we're going to hire A players. That's a given. But we hire A players who you'd like to be next door neighbors with. Good people that you like. And that, because if you do, then presumably customers will know that you're authentic and you're solid. Then the question is, how do you perpetuate that through recruiting and hiring? And what we sort of came up with was a 4-prong equation. And I say equation because, like an algebraic equation, if one piece is missing, the answer is going to be wrong. And the answer is always performance. But that equation was track record plus business skills plus discipline multiplied by integrity. And each one of them has a number of definitions in between it. So really the question is how do you ensure that you perpetuate that culture through great hiring?
Well, I think great team culture starts by diversity. You can't have everyone coming from the same background and the same dimensions, or they all just start aligning up. And it's like when you have all your 4 legs on your stool all lined up in a row, you're going to tip over. But when your team is diverse and you have a good base of people and personalities coming together, they're going to push each other and help each other grow and understand each other. And they're not going to be sitting around trying to be egos and try to beat each other up. So that's one thing I'm really always trying to look for, is a diverse group. And there could be quirky people. There's smart, really driven people that are structured. You got all these different type of personalities. It makes a team stronger. And when you have that, that's when you really get the success. And for a manager that can be looking for new team players, you've got to have a bench. You got to have people outside your job, your employer, and you're always assessing people to come into your team. You're looking at them. So I talk to people for 3-4 months on LinkedIn or whatever, or if I had them on a job and I got new resumes came in, I'll take those and start talking to them and work with them for 2-3 months before the next posting comes out. So then I've identified these people as not just transactions of finding a job, but people that I think have the career and the charisma to make it happen. The last tip I give is that interview, when you say for a sales job, when you ask, do you have any questions?
Yes.
No.
Right.
A salesperson has to have a question. The question of a salesperson is how they lead and gain information. If they don't know how to lead an interview or gain information from an interview, they got to ask questions. It's so they don't have any good questions. And I don't care if they're just off the wall, crazy questions. Like we sometimes ask, what's your favorite tree? Are you like, there's a reason why you ask that question, right? You're trying to see their creativity. You're trying to see where they're coming, what their values come out of that, right? But same thing on the other side. Are they asking any types of questions? That tells me they're going to be a curious person and they're not going to be wanting to tell you something. They want to learn.
That's a great point.
So tell us, you got any like real success stories or CEOs that have gone through transformations as you've worked with them or that you've seen?
One of my favorite recent goals is a company that has AI software for continuous manufacturing. And they designed that and moved it over to more of a wastewater plant, which is a continuous manufacturing process to clean the water. And they took that AI out, and we found, 500 names, very small list. We couldn't find very many, 500 lists, and we got over 35 meetings in 1 month. And the true reason why is because we found the customer, the clients that no one's ever selling to. So really, I learned from that is when you talk to a client base or a product base, who do they want to target? Well, then you got to broaden the ideas of where you could be coming from at a different angle. Because if you're talking to plant managers who don't get sales pitches all the time, they're more likely to connect with you and you talk with them. Another great customer I worked with is truly the dynamics of the connections with the BDRs and selling those outreaches, because everybody needs help building sales right now. And so having that diverse people working with and finding that once you get that daily rigor going and you build that consistency, it's so much easier in their life. And so we have to build that rigor that's so comfortable for them to just deliver the results, and they start feeling comfortable with themselves. And then the new heights of reaching the revenue goals is so much easier.
Terrific. Two great case studies. So this is probably a good time to transition to our favorite part of the show. And it's always, I never dive in and find out what people are bringing to the show. So surprise us and tell us a little bit about your rock and roll experience.
Well, as you can see, with my hairstyle, I don't really do a lot of this kind of rock and roll. My kind of rock and roll is more like folk rock and roll. My favorite is John Cougar Mellencamp. I enjoy that type of guitar and conversation type of music. But the funny thing about my situation is the first concert I ever went to was Michael Jackson in Denver at the football stadium back in 1985, I believe it was. And so it was great to be there with my sister. And the fun story behind that was that I sold the most chocolate bars, those entertainment bars. They were selling them back then in schools. And I sold the most candy bars for 2 tickets to see Michael Jackson Thriller. And so I took my older sister, because she had a driver's license, and we went to Michael Jackson Thriller. And that
What a
was
great
just
memory.
amazing.
Yeah, so you saw them on the you just mentioned the tour,
Thriller.
the Thriller tour. That was that was like at his heyday, his zenith.
Because his brothers all it was right when basically like the Jackson 5 kind of started breaking up, and it just became just the Michael Jackson show. And his brothers were all his backup singers and players, and kind of been on the tour that way. Because I remember on I forgot to bring it with me, but I still have the program, and it was like it's like 2 feet long. It was a big program. But one of the pictures had the 5 brothers standing behind a 5 fast like Ferraris and Porsches and all that. But all 5 brothers were still there in their building their images around themselves. And so it was kind of very much that, as you said, the pinnacle of when he started really transitioning over to be a solo singer.
So I'm interested. You told us you're originally from Indiana, and
Right.
both the Michael Jackson and John Cougar Mellencamp are from Indiana.
That's right.
That's right. Good connection. You're right.
We
He's
know
full
our
of
stuff.
he's full
I
of
guess it's kind of hard
useless
that I like
stories.
the Celtics when Larry Bird was there. So I guess that really makes it.
Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just going to say you're full of trivia. That's what I've noticed about you. That there's always a connection somehow with you. I love it.
So who else? Who else do you love, or what was your best concert?
Well, the most recent concert my wife and I actually went to was a couple years ago, and it was Kenny Rogers' Last Stand concert. And didn't have, he didn't have the lungs that he used to have, but just finally seeing him live was important to me because I was a big gambler. Back in the 80s, he was on he had TV shows and movies on Sundays and things like that. And I just loved his storytelling and his songs, and got to see him live before his last concert. And so it was great to kind of connect with that. Another last one is "Cats in the Cradle" is one of my favorite songs from college that I still play today for my kids and remind them, just that song of how life grows through, how we all grow through life, and how they hopefully stick closer to their dad. Borrow my keys and drive my own motorcycle, my own car. When they come home from college.
Um, what was amazing, I saw him in Ravinia in Chicago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what I love about music, and Keegan last week did a great job just connecting the stories. We had another guest, Mark J. Carter, who, when he described Aerosmith, he said, Aerosmith was the soundtrack to my high school. It carried me through breaking up with girlfriends. It, played in my car, and when I got my license. And I just think of how those memories, everyone, you included, just attach the magical moments of life to their rock and roll.
I just remember listening to Jack and Diane in my car, in rolling down the windows, singing that song out as loud as I can, just to connect with that. And Small Town, John Cougar's song, "The Small Town," living in a small town is truly, even though I live in a big city in San Diego, I find the small townness of it all to have that connection. And so totally can see how those relationships, and when it comes down to my personal direction and kind of where I coach and work with people, I bring it as small town as we can to connect with people so we feel comfortable to have true conversations.
I love that.
That's great. It's always fun to be at a concert and be able to engage with other people that are there because you're there for the same purpose and the same reason and the same likeness of the band, and everybody's got a different experience. It's a lot of fun, and Keith and I talk a lot about, and of course one of the big reasons we put the rock and roll at the end of marketing is because marketing and sales play a huge key in band success and all the marketing that goes into it and how different it is now versus when we were kids. You'd either find out about it by reading the paper or you'd see billboards on or posters on a light post or something along those lines, but it was all in the effort to sell tickets. And the more tickets you sell, the more popular you become, and everything else that goes along with it. So that's many layers deep, and Keith and I talk about that a lot.
Dude, you have the master player right now with Taylor Swift.
Oh, gee.
You talk about knowing how to market. Wow.
Yeah.
And then she also does it with integrity, which I totally respect.
Yes.
My twin daughters, I surprised them for the Eras tour. I surprised them with tickets to Taylor Swift, but it was hard. I'm a Swiftie dad. I got my pre-approved access to buy tickets for them. I wanted to get 4 tickets to go see Taylor Swift. When I got in there, I couldn't buy tickets fast enough or win the click, 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 click to get tickets. And so I was so bummed that day I did not have any tickets. And that's when it blew up, that how the back office really messed up Taylor Swift concert goers. And so 2 weeks later, they actually reached out to me and said, we saw you registered. We saw you tried. We saw you tried multiple times. We know you're a human. We know we want to help you. Can we try to get you 2 tickets to a concert in LA? And I was like, can I get 4? They said, no, we'd only do 2 tickets. So I was like, perfect. And I was like, up to $300. I was willing to pay anything to get into the concert. And they got me tickets for $140, which were the first row, upper rim of the floor. And it was my daughters had such a great time. And boy, they still tear up when they start thinking about that event. And I just know that I made their first concert a memorable one for them. They're one of the best concert goers. And she gets me buying new records almost every month now, because a new track comes out, it's just the full realm of living in Taylor's world is pretty fun for my daughters.
That's dad of the year.
That's absolutely. This is the week after Father's Day, so you really score high for the week here.
Yeah. I keep reminding him just to make sure I keep elevating that the dad award.
When speaking of the Rolling Stones, when I saw them in 2007, we got in and our seats were behind a tower that had a big monitor on it, and we went to security, and I was with a party, and so I was talking to them, and one of the guys in my party started mouthing off, and you could just feel the energy shift away, the negativity that he brought in. The security team that was trying to solve the problem changed their body language, and I just turned to my friend. I said, "Get him out of here." And they turned around, and once that had been settled out, they put us in the best seats. I mean, I was along the runway in 10th row, 2 seats in, to see Mick Jagger prancing around on the runway there. And I just think, a little kindness will get you everywhere. And rock and roll, whether it's the Grateful Dead traveling around and sharing your food or what have you, there's an ethos that you really have to adhere to, and karma's a bitch when you don't.
It's interesting. We probably all have connections to people also in the music industry. Two random ones I have. One is one of my current neighbors. He's a firefighter, or friend in Poway. He's a firefighter in the southern part of San Diego, and he's actually the head guy on top of the concert goer. So he sits at almost a lot of the concerts. He's in the back monitoring the security and safety of the concerts. And occasionally he'll be able to get a break and go out there and listen to it live, but then he goes back into watching all the monitors, making sure everybody's safe. And that's really cool that he gets to hear all these concerts and be able to be part of that. The second person was way back when I was a kid in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Our neighbors were the family that owned the dump. Like, what happens to all these concert t-shirts back then, they would all just go to the dump. So they always had cool concert t-shirts that we would be able to, maybe they'd bring home for us or share or whatever. Or I would see the teenage kids be wearing these concerts. Like, did you go to that concert? No, we just got them, So it's like random stories of how the concert industry and what it really takes to really put on these shows, and then what happens around it.
Wow, that's great. That reminds me of John Cougar Mellencamp. Ain't That America?
Yeah. Perfect.
Well, this has been wonderful. We're coming up on our time. It's great to meet people, out on the tour, so to speak, like you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with us and having a little bit of fun.
Well, I wish I could be at a concert in Red Rocks this weekend in Denver. That's one of probably the best places to hear concerts too.
That's a special place in the world.
Yeah.
Come on out. You can stay with us
anytime. Well, this is we do this because we have been spent for the last 2.5 years doing these interviews, and what we found out is that the way we process the video from these interviews in and of itself is probably more valuable than what we were doing in our consulting. And so we have this podcast ecosystem, and what you're going to see, and you've seen with Keegan and some of the others, is just the massive amounts of content that we can create out of this interview. And we're looking forward to sharing your story, and we'll see you out on the circuit.
Sounds great, guys. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. Wish you guys all the best at tonight's concert.
Thank you, Kevin. We really enjoyed the conversation and dialogue.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next week.